What's up, everyone? Welcome to the NBA Daily Podcast, your home for useless facts about the NBA. My name's Dawson Shine, and I'm your host. Starting off today, we're going to be talking about one of the worst nights in playoff history. And by worst, I mean most boring night of basketball I think I've ever seen. We had two playoff matchups, Boston Celtics versus the Atlanta Hawks, and the Memphis Grizzlies versus the San Antonio Spurs. Both of these games witnessed some of the worst offensive performances by teams I have ever seen in the playoffs. The first game, Atlanta versus Boston, was 89-72, Atlanta winning to get a 2-0 series lead. But that's not even all the whole story. Boston scored 7 points in the first quarter, which ties the record for the worst first quarter performance by any team in playoff history, as well as setting a franchise record for the Celtics of the least amount of points scored in a playoff quarter. 7 points. At one point, the score was 24-3 in the first quarter. It was insane. Kyle Korver came out shooting very hot. He had 5 threes in the first quarter and was on fire. Also, the Celtics really didn't have anyone to match up against him. Avery Bradley was out. He was injured from the first game. And also, Kelly Olynyk was out. So that forced Brad Stevens to really look at his lineup and try and figure out who to play. Unfortunately, he chose to play R.J. Hunter in the first quarter. 4 seconds into his time on the court, R.J. Hunter, who's a rookie for the Celtics, lost Kyle Korver on a screen, and he had a wide open three. He was on the court for a total of 4 seconds and gave up 3 points. That's pretty much the story of the Celtics night. They just could not do anything. On defense or offense. Their defense may seem okay. They only allowed 89 points, which isn't bad. But in reality, it was just Atlanta poor shooting. They had a bunch of open shots in the second half that they could have hit to put this game away, and they just couldn't put it away. But after that first quarter, the Celtics offense just struggled all night. Isaiah Thomas continued to have playoff struggles as teams packed the paint like the Atlanta Hawks did and prevent him from getting to the basket. Once he can't get to the basket, he settles for outside jump shots and just fails miserably. Honestly, one of the worst games I've seen from him. He shot a nice 26.7%. That's delicious, yeah. 4 for 15 from the floor. He was 1 for 6 from 3. The only redeeming quality was 7 for 8 from the free throw line. But in all honesty, most of those points that he scored came in the second half after the game was out of reach. He scored like 9 straight points in the fourth quarter to get his total to 16 points on the game. But it was all after the game was already a 22-point lead with 4 minutes to go. So it was useless. And another person who's been struggling for the Celtics, who continued that last night, was Jay Crowder. 1 for 9 from the field, 0 for 4 from 3. He had 2 points, 7 rebounds. But in reality, it was even worse than that. He's no longer a threat on the outside. They don't have to honor his outside shot because he is not playing like he did before his ankle injury. He's banged up. Also, Isaiah Thomas appears to have a wrist injury, which is preventing him from shooting from outside, and the team is just not clicking on offense. Evan Turner tried to carry the team, and so did Amir Johnson. Those are the only two that really played okay, and even then, Evan Turner had too many turnovers and didn't really run the offense efficiently. Amir Johnson, though, had a good game. He was 6 for 11 with 14 points. And then Terry Rozier, the rookie, who had to play a lot of minutes last night because of the injuries to the lineups. He played quite a bit. He was 4 for 7. He hit 2 threes, had 10 points. That was encouraging. But overall, it was just an awful offensive performance. Another key point to that offensive performance was Marcus Smart, who did have a great game in the second half of the first game of the series, which helped get the Celtics back into that one. In this game, he could not get anything going. He shot 9%. You didn't hear that wrong, folks. 9%. 1 for 11 from the field. 1 for 6 from 3. That's just, you can't do that as a starting shooting guard, He started in place of Avery Bradley and proceeded to lay an egg miserably. On the other side, the Atlanta Hawks played really well, especially on defense. The Celtics could not get anything. They had so many blocks, 15 for the team, also 7 steals, which is just forcing turnovers everywhere. I can't even tell you how many times they eviscerated Isaiah Thomas on the drive. Especially Paul Millsap and Al Horford. They played really well. Al Horford did have a scare, though, where they thought he was injured in the second half, but he was fine. He came back to the game. He shot 6 for 11, had 17 points. Paul Millsap, though, did not have a good game on offense. He was shut down by the Celtics defense, thanks especially in part to Amir Johnson. Paul shot 1 for 12 from the field, 8%. And had 4 points on the game, which is really not on par with what he's used to. He also had 5 turnovers. But honestly, this game was just not even close from the start. Even with Kent Bazemore and Paul Millsap combined shooting less than 3 for 26 from the field and combined for 9 points, Celtics still couldn't get anything going. This game seemed like it was so close during it, despite the fact that the Celtics could not score at all. They had 28 points at halftime, and yet they were only down by 15. But they never could come back in this game. They continued to falter on offense because of the Atlanta defense stifling them and shots never falling into the basket. The lid on the hoop never came up. So we're going to be going back to Boston in this series with Atlanta up 2-0, the Celtics struggling to find offense still in the playoffs, and hopefully trying to find some saving grace that can save the series, because if they go down 3-0, it might as well be a sweep. But the sad part about last night was the fact that this boring, awful game that I could barely stomach to watch as a fan of the Celtics was not even one of the worst games of the night. The Memphis Grizzlies playing against the San Antonio Spurs. That was a bad game as well. 94-68. The Grizzlies somehow went out there and scored less points than the Celtics did. The Grizzlies had a huge hot first half with a total of 35 points from the field. And then they came back in the second half and were even better, 33 points. It was ridiculously awful to watch. They shot a total of 33% as a team and 14% from three. They shot 56% on free throws. They couldn't hit free throws, that's how good the San Antonio Spurs defense was. And man, Zach Randolph, I felt bad for him. He shot 5 for 17, and honestly, it looked like he shot worse. He could not get anything going in this game. Kawhi Leonard, LaMarcus Aldridge, Tim Duncan combined to stifle him. It was ridiculous. He was trying to carry this team to a victory, but he could not get anything against these 7-footers and these 6'11 power forwards. LaMarcus Aldridge shut him down, and then when Zach Randolph did his moves to get by LaMarcus Aldridge, he got blocked by Tim Duncan. I mean, Tim Duncan has no vertical, but Zach Randolph might as well have a negative vertical the way he played. He was getting stuffed everywhere. And he may not have had that many turnovers, but each one of those blocks should have counted as a turnover because it was stifling defense. Also, Matt Barnes shot 3 for 11. Jordan Farmar shot 3 for 11. I mean, the whole team shot badly. I don't even know why I'm going to go through that. They could not get any offense. They're depending on only Zach Randolph and Tony Allen as their scoring options. Tony Allen is not a scoring option. I'm sorry, the fact that he was the game-high scorer with 12 points is ridiculous. I don't know if anyone remembers what Tony Allen used to be, but it was basically just a defensive player who didn't even start. And he's not even starting on this Memphis Grizzlies team. That's how bad he is on offense. And yet, he scored the most points for them because they could not get anything going. On the other side, the Spurs had another easy win. Pop is barely playing his starters. I mean, the biggest minutes that anyone played was Kawhi Leonard with 26 minutes. Imagine being in a playoff game where you only have to play your starters 26 minutes and you win. That's ridiculous. I mean, his team didn't even shoot that great, 47%. However, they didn't really need to, considering they won by 26 points anyways, and their bench was in the third quarter. It was just a great defensive showing by this team. Tony Parker had a okay night, didn't shoot well though. Manu Ginobili had a couple of nice shots in the first half. Patty Mills was great, as usual. He had a hot second half, 4 for 6 from 3. LaMarcus Aldridge, Tim Duncan, and Kawhi Leonard shut down everyone on the Grizzlies. I mean, you don't need to look at their team and see who scored the most points. You need to look at the defensive side of the ball for the Spurs. And honestly, they're incredible. They're absolutely incredible. If they could play this kind of defense in the next round and the Western Conference Finals after that, they might be able to make the playoffs and beat the Golden State Warriors. But you have to keep in mind, they're playing against a depleted Memphis Grizzlies team who are missing Mike Conley, Brandon Wright, they lost Mario Chalmers earlier in the season, and they lost Marc Gasol. They have no one. And so it's really, I almost wish the NBA had like a mercy rule, where if you're up 2-0 in a series going back and you've won by a combined 25 points each game, you should be able to get the series called off. Because honestly, the Grizzlies aren't going to do any better. They're getting blown out, and it's going to stay that way, even in Memphis. I don't care how tough they try to play, they're just outmatched talent-wise. So outmatched. And the Spurs are more focused and have more cohesive units because they've been playing together all season. Kind of sucks to be a Grizzlies fan at this point because you know your team's not going to be able to win a game, and you're just kind of watching the remnants of what was left of a good team struggle in the playoffs against a great, historically great San Antonio Spurs team. Hopefully the series will be over in 4 so no one has to watch any more of this mess. Same thing with the Boston series. Hopefully Boston can either start playing better, because they do have the talent to do so, unlike the Memphis Grizzlies, or either that or just stop playing so awful. But we do get to look forward to some better games tonight. Hopefully, the Charlotte versus Miami series will be better than the first game, which was terrible. The first game was an absolute blowout. Miami crushed the Hornets. Hopefully this game, it won't be the same thing, because I'm honestly sick of watching blowouts. These games are boring. Watching offenses struggle to score in the playoffs should not be something that happens, because these teams are playoff teams. Why are they struggling to score at all? Why do their offensive systems seem to be so bad? Hopefully the Hornets can help muck up the system and beat the Miami Heat in their own game, in their own arena. However, I still predict the Miami Heat to win this game by 10. I don't think that they have the ability to win in Miami. The Hornets have a good lineup with Kemba Walker, Jeremy Lin, Nicholas Batum. Those kind of players can really score, but I just don't know if they're going to be able to defend against the trifecta of Hassan Whiteside, Luol Deng, and Joe Johnson. Those aren't even the main star players for the Heat, except for Hassan Whiteside. But they just don't have any good defensive forwards that can lock down those players. Nicholas Batum may be able to try to stop Joe Johnson, but then Luol Deng's open. Or then Al Jefferson is going to get stuck with Hassan Whiteside, and we all know how Al Jefferson defends. He might as well not be there. So the Miami Heat will probably run their offense through those three players again. And if anything actually goes wrong, the Miami Heat can always turn to Dwayne Wade, the NBA Finals MVP, the champion, or they can turn to Goran Dragic, who is also a great player, and have them score. The Miami Heat's team is loaded, and I don't think that the Hornets have the defensive capabilities to slow them down. So Miami's going to win this one 108-98. The Detroit Pistons versus the Cleveland Cavaliers is the next game, 8 p.m. on TNT, and I think the Pistons are actually going to steal a game in Cleveland. Now, that's a really ballsy prediction, but I think the way they played in that first game was indicative of how they're going to play the rest of the series. They're a tough matchup for Cleveland. Andre Drummond inside is a great draw. He forces the defense to collapse because you can't one-on-one defend him. Also, the Pistons bench outplayed the Cleveland Cavaliers bench, outscored them as well, 21-14. And also, an interesting fact, when LeBron James was not on the court for the Cleveland Cavaliers, they were outscored 23-11 by the Pistons. That means that Pistons outscored a lineup with either Kyrie Irving or Kevin Love by 12 points total. So LeBron's going to need to have a massive game in order to win this one. I think that maybe if Kyrie Irving or Kevin Love go cold in this game, unlike the first one, then they will be able to lose this game, and the Pistons will steal one and tie up the series 1-1. I think that they're going to win 98-94 Pistons. And that's my bold prediction for the night. The next game is going to be the matchup between the Clippers and the Blazers. Now, the first game was almost a blowout. The Clippers had a commanding lead throughout the second half, and especially in the fourth quarter, it was pretty much over. But I think the Blazers can bounce back and give them a good game this time. I think that Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum will have a much better game, especially CJ McCollum. And as long as they don't let Blake Griffin just dominate Plumlee again, they'll be able to hang in this game. But if they don't contain Blake Griffin or Chris Paul again, then they will get blown out again. Hopefully, they will. I think that they have the capability to, as long as CJ McCollum is the one that's guarding Chris Paul and not Damian Lillard. So, I think that it's going to be a very close game, but that the Clippers will have the talent edge and the ability edge. So I have the Clippers winning 105-102. Very close game in my mind. The final thing I want to talk about today is the Sixth Man of the Year awards, which Jamal Crawford of the Clippers actually won for the third time in his career. He won the Sixth Man of the Year award. Now, this is interesting because no other player in NBA history has ever won 3 times. However, there are 4 players that have won it twice. That is Jamal Crawford, Kevin McHale, and Ricky Pierce and Detlef Schrempf. But Jamal Crawford has now become the first player, and at 36 years of age, to win the 3rd time. So, he took home the first place prize with 51 first place votes out of 130 voters. Second place was Andre Iguodala, the Golden State Warriors' 6th man, who came in second with 33 first place votes. And then rounding out the top 3 was the Oklahoma City Thunder center Enes Kanter, who came in 3rd place with 19 first place votes, as well as 20 second place and 27 third place votes. To round out the top 5, you have Will Barton of the Denver Nuggets and Boston Celtics' own Evan Turner, who came in 5th. So, I think that this is pretty much the best choice for the award. Jamal Crawford averaged 14 points on 40% shooting and 34% from 3, 27 minutes a game this season. But I think the real key to this was the fact that when Blake Griffin missed over 3 months due to a hand and quad injury, Jamal Crawford stepped up and averaged 16 points a game on 42% shooting, which is much, much better. He was really, really key to keeping the Clippers in a position to have a high seed in the playoffs and keep home court advantage. And without him leading the bench and giving them great contributions, the Clippers probably would have fallen out of the top 4 in the West and wouldn't have home court advantage in the playoffs because of all the time that Blake Griffin missed. So he has a well-deserving third Sixth Man of the Year award. Great choice by the voters, and I think it's an interesting finish, especially for some of the players like Will Barton, who haven't really gotten any national notice, despite playing really well, especially in Denver, which doesn't have that much national media. Overall, I think it was a good season by Jamal Crawford, and it looks like he's going to keep up this hot streak in the playoffs. That's all for today, folks. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed, feel free to leave a like, subscribe if you want to hear more, and have a great day.